Wireless LAN Weekly, Episode 41, The Morality of Buying and Selling Legacy Wi-Fi.
Welcome to Wireless LAN Weekly, a podcast focused on the wireless networking professional. We aim to educate, inform, entertain, and inspire. Get ready to listen and enjoy. Now to our host of the show, Keith Parsons.
Welcome to today's podcast on the morality of buying and selling legacy Wi-Fi. I know that's a statement that's going to come across kind of strong. And, sometimes in wireless LANs we have to get a little controversy going in our discussions. So I kind of labeled this one about morality. We're going to talk a little bit about the morality parts today as well. But I really should have called this and labeled this episode, Here Be Dragons. I'm sure you've seen maps from long ago when cartographers really didn't know what existed. They would draw a little mythical creature that supposedly inhabited that section of the unknown world. The term in Latin was Hic sunt dracones, for here be dragons. Now, looking back in our position where we are today, we know there's no dragons. We also know the earth isn't flat. And it's kind of humorous to look back at the beliefs of those old cartographers and those who purchased the maps and those who even put their lives on the line to go and follow those maps on their voyages of discovery. But today, wouldn't you think it a bit immoral if a current day shop sold you one of those maps to help you find your way around this world and you were thinking that the world's actually flat? Likewise, people today prey on many weak-minded individuals by selling legacy Wi-Fi equipment. They are in the same boat as those cartographers. Yes, I know this is a strong statement, but let me explain this with a couple of points. First of all, any 802.11n device is better than any 802.11 non-N device. Well, for the sake of argument and to use an easier term, I'll continue to call non-802.11 devices legacy. One, the 802.11 protocol calls them legacy, plus there's a reason they're called legacy. 802.11 devices are faster, smarter, and listen better than anything that came before. Thus today, buying or selling any non-802.11 device, also known as legacy devices, is tantamount to selling a map of the world showing the world being flat. It's patently wrong. Another item to think about here is Moore's Law wins. For the past 40 plus years, there's been a very simple concept put forth by Intel's Moore that is held fairly true. Yeah, I know that there's some controversy about Moore's Law not being current today, but we'll kind of skip that for our discussion here today. Moore's Law basically states every 18 months, the transistor count, read the smarts, on a chip doubles. So every 18 months, we should have twice as smart of processors. So since 802.11n first came out, we've had at least 5 Moore's cycles since then. That's double, quadruple, 8, 16, 32 times more processing power in today's Wi-Fi chipsets than in the legacy equipment that we're using and have on board. So today, any N device has much, much more computing power than any non-N device. Next, 802.11 trumps legacy. .11n has been coming for years. In fact, the .11n group started before the G even hit the market. They've known how to fix some of the issues inherent in B and A and G for a long time. We just didn't have the hardware to catch up to it. So we had technological innovations, but we didn't have the hardware to support it. We had to wait for Moore's Law to make our hardware catch up to where the software was. 802.11n updates the physical layer. It updates the MAC layers. It updates and adds digital signal processors directly into Wi-Fi silicon. We can now take advantage of all those acronyms that you've heard in other 802.11n webinars or courses. Things like SDM, STBC, FEC, FASEL, MRC, MCS, and even MIMO. And yes, it is pronounced MIMO. They had a vote, Just to highlight one of the advances incorporated in 802.11n, and it happens to be one of my personal favorites, we'll talk a little bit about MCS, maximum ratio combining. But this is only one of many, many technological advances that make all N devices better than non-N devices. So MRC alone, this one by itself is worth moving to .11n. This technique is kind of like the older diversity antennas. In diversity, we had two antennas, antenna 1, antenna 2. They both listened to the incoming RF signal, compared the two, kept the stronger, and discarded the weak one. But unlike diversity, MRC doesn't discard the weak one. Because it has digital signal processors in line, in between the antenna and the transceiver, it has the processing power to, on the fly, during real time, compare the input from antenna 1, 2, and 3, and not only take the best of those three, but take the best of each individual one and combine them together into even better signal. Again, this one alone justifies moving to 802.11n in the enterprise. On top of MRC, we have all the other levers, MIMO, STBC, SDM, etc. Now, for a kind of a killer and I think a damning one when it comes down to the morality side. And you might not find this too hard to believe, or you might not believe me, but if you did some research, you'd find out that production costs for 802.11n chipsets are the same or lower than legacy chipsets. Today, everyone's buying, not everyone, obviously. Some people are still buying legacy, but the big majority of people are buying 802.11n chipsets. So they have higher demand. With a higher demand, they have more supply, and we have more supply, and thus the cost drops. The cost for legacy chipsets, since there's not as much demand, are actually a little higher. So if you were thinking and you realize the cost for a legacy AP or the cost for a .11n AP are the same, why would you ever buy a non.11n AP? So this is where the first morality bit sneaks in. Now, I'll give you a point. Some vendors will say, oh, we need to recoup our R&D costs that come from our .11n R&D. So thus, we're going to add some money to the cost of the known cheaper hardware to make end devices cost more. That's a pretty small reason because companies have always been covering their R&D costs through sales. They don't have to exact an extra penalty just because you want to cover your R&D. Now, in this line, some vendors go way overboard, what I would say way past the line of propriety. They would sell you a N access point with all the equipment, the hardware, everything's built in, the chipsets are N capable, and then physically remove the N features. Now, they're physically on the chipsets, they can run, they just do it in licensing. It's just software. And then in the future, when you want to, quote, upgrade to N, you just pay them additional licensing fee, and they release the features that were there all the time. This is vaporware. Can you imagine heading down to your local electronics retailer and buying a brand new HD LCD panel TV? And when you get home, you realize that it only shows standard def. Of course, you can easily upgrade it to the high definition by just paying an extra license fee to the manufacturer. This is ludicrous to the extreme. And yet, today, some vendors are actually doing that. They'll sell you the N hardware, and then a second time sell you the software on top of it. Crazy. Well, this comes down to your decisions. If you're a reseller or a vendor of Wi-Fi equipment, why are you still selling known inferior products? On the other side, if you're a buyer of Wi-Fi equipment, why are you still specifying or even purchasing known inferior equipment? Once you know that the end stuff is so much better, across the board, better than any legacy equipment, why would you ever spec it again? Either of those is akin to a modern-day map maker selling maps showing here be dragons at the edge of a flat world. Once you know 802.11n is superior in every way, and yet still costs the same, why are you doing it now? So in the final analysis, every day that you delay movement to an all 802.11n environment, you're delaying the massive benefits that you'll get when you get to .11n Greenfield. So in conclusion, I encourage you to walk in tomorrow to your purchasing office and talk them into raising their right hand and take the following oath. I will never again buy any non-802.11n equipment, ever. Do that right away. Get your purchasing on board, get your IT staff on board, get everybody who's involved in your wireless network on board to move to .11n as soon as possible, and stop buying legacy equipment. Thank you very much. I'm sure this is going to have some, in Europe, controversy, or over here we have the same controversy about this. Feel free to leave your messages either on Twitter. You can follow me at Keith R. Parsons on Twitter, or leave messages on the website, or just link to the show notes here on Wireless LAN Weekly. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
Wireless LAN Weekly, a podcast focused on the needs of wireless LAN professionals. We look forward to your feedback. Please leave your comments at the bottom of the show notes, or email feedback on the show can be sent to feedback@wirelesslandprofessionals.com. If you'd like to leave a voicemail feedback, just call 24/7 and leave a message at 1-801-481-9018. Until next time, this has been another production of WirelessLANProfessionals.com, a place to educate, inform, entertain, and inspire.